Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Consider cooking.
Hi, my name is Abigail and I work in the Youth Services Department at the Bettendorf Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make some vegan or vegetarian pizza. So the first thing that I did was I preheated the oven to 450 degrees, and this recipe is meant to be really simple, really a good beginner recipe if you're just becoming vegan or vegetarian, and it's meant to be very easily customizable with the different vegetables you use and stuff like that. The materials that you'll need to bake this pizza is a cookie sheet, a couple of mixing bowls, a measuring cup with some water, a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin at home, then before I had one, I used a glass that didn't have a lot of texture on the outside, some measuring cups and measuring spoons, a knife to cut up vegetables. You can also use your knife to mince the garlic, but if you have a garlic press at home, you can use that. And then I just use a regular spoon to mix the dough together. So those are all of the materials that we need. And then for ingredients, I use wheat flour. You can also use bread flour or do a combination if you want. We have yeast, some olive oil, for the tomato sauce, we're going to go really simple, so I just got a can of plain tomato sauce, some garlic. We're going to use a few cloves of that, and I use about half a tablespoon of dried garlic or dried basil. You can use fresh basil, you can use a little bit less, you can use a little bit more. And then the vegetables that I really like to put on mine are broccoli. I think that scene from Inside Out where she's like grossing out over broccoli on pizza has ruined broccoli on pizza for a lot of people, and I'm here to say that it's delicious. I use one bell pepper, any color that you like, and some Brussels sprouts. And honestly, I don't think that you can taste the Brussels sprouts a lot, but they add a really good like crunchy texture. All right, so we are going to get our dough together. The first thing that you need is 2.5 cups of flour, there's that. Then we're going to need, we have instant yeast, and so with this you don't have to let it set and get all bubbly, but if you use active dry yeast, then you put it in water and you let it get all bubbly first. So we'll dump that in there. Then we're going to add a cup of warm water, a teaspoon of sugar, two tablespoons of olive oil, and 1 teaspoon of salt. All right. Now I'm gonna mix this all together. And in the beginning, I mix it all with a spoon, but then once it starts getting a little bit thicker, I usually just mix it with my hands. And so this dough isn't gonna look like if you go to like Low Pies or another like really nice pizza chain, but it's really satisfying and filling. I think that the garlic and the tomato gives it a really good savory taste. And then you have all the different textures of the vegetables. And when you're first starting out being vegan, the best thing is to find a couple of simple recipes that you know how to do that you really like, and then you can expand from there. Because if you're drastically changing your diet, then it can be really stressful and kind of overwhelming. But if you just start with a couple of things that you already like, then it's a lot easier, and then you can expand from there. So there is our dough. I'm just going to set that aside while we do the tomato sauce and cut up our vegetables. So our next step is we are going to make our tomato sauce, and so I just got a bowl. I just got a can of tomato sauce from the grocery store, some garlic. We're just going to use a couple of cloves, and half a tablespoon of dried basil. And so, like I said earlier, this is meant to be a super simple recipe. Now we'll add the garlic, and I'm just going to add a couple of big cloves. Maybe a couple big cloves and a small one. I really like garlic. Oh, that one's pretty ginormous. I think I'll just use these two. Then the best way to peel garlic is you just smash it with the heel of your thumb, or you can use a knife, and that gives you a little bit more leverage, and it makes peeling off this skin a lot easier. And then I like to use the garlic press, just because I feel like it makes it incorporate into the sauce a little bit more, or a little bit better. Another good tip if you are becoming vegan or vegetarian is having a couple of restaurants up your sleeve or in the back of your mind for if friends or family want to go out to eat, because it can be really hard, but also surprisingly not hard to find really good restaurants. And a couple of cuisines that lend themselves really well to vegan and vegetarian stuff is Indian, Thai food, sushi, obviously just the vegetable sushi, and some pizza places do, as well as some sandwich places. It just depends on what toppings they have available. So here's our tomato sauce. Super simple, and I usually use the whole can because I kind of like the sauciness, and it keeps it from getting dry. So we will set this aside, and we're going to chop up all of our vegetables. So the vegetables that I chose to use are broccoli, bell pepper, and Brussels sprouts. But the best part about this recipe is that you can customize it depending on whatever vegetables you like. Hopefully, since you are vegan or vegetarian now, you like lots of vegetables. Then we're going to use our rolling pin to shape it out. And sometimes actually a glass, like I mentioned earlier, is a little bit better because it fits inside of this cookie sheet better. And then if it's sticking, you can use some flour too. so your rolling pin doesn't stick to the dough. Our pizza dough is ready, so we're ready to put on the sauce. Like I said, I like to use a lot of sauce. Nice and saucy, so it doesn't get dry. You can use your spoon, make sure it's all nice and spread around. Okay, there's all of our sauce. Nice and saucy. Okay. So, here are vegetables. I usually do the Brussels sprouts first. Sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. Honestly, this is the most fun part because this just feels like a little bit of an art project. And like I said earlier, this just adds some crunch, some good texture. There's probably some vitamins or something in there. Okay. And then the broccoli. I don't know if I'll use all of this broccoli. It's quite a lot of broccoli. And you could pre-cook the broccoli and all the other vegetables if you wanted to. I kind of like that it just crunches them up in the oven and they aren't like soggy or anything. And then I'm gonna add some bell pepper. Probably could have done these in slightly smaller chunks, but that's okay. And then you might be noticing that we are not adding any vegan cheese or like a plant-based like sausage or anything like that, and that stuff can be super delicious and fun to use, but it also is the most expensive part about being vegan or vegetarian. And a lot of people think that it's really expensive, but it really only gets expensive once you start eating that kind of stuff all the time. Some Brussels sprout leaves, which I just think look cool because they kind of get burnt in the oven. Not burnt, but the edges of them get dark, and so it looks kind of cool when you take it out. And then this can be fun too if you change it depending on the time of year, depending on what vegetables are in season. And the best thing about adding so many vegetables is that it's really filling, and then you have a lot left over depending on how much pizza you like to eat. So it's really good as leftovers. I usually eat it cold, but you could definitely heat it back up. Here's our pizza. It's usually pretty heavy going into the oven, which I think is a good sign. It means you're going to end up with a lot of food. Now we're going to put our pizza in for 15 to 20 minutes until the crust, you can tell, is getting a slightly darker brown. Since we're using whole wheat bread, it is a little bit harder or whole wheat flour is a little bit harder to tell, but you should be able to tell. Alright, so I had it in there for about 18 minutes by the end of it, and this is what we ended up with. And you can see how it did the thing to the Brussels sprout leaves, and if you look really close, you can kind of see where the crust was cooked, so you can tell when you look in the oven that it's cooked. And another thing you can do if you want to double check is you can use a spatula to lift it up and check underneath to see if it's cooked. And I guess the other thing I should mention that you might need is a pizza cutter, but if you don't have one, you can use a knife. So I hope that you try it at home. I hope that you eat a delicious vegan pizza and that you become vegan and save all of the cows. And we'll see you on our next cooking video. You don't even need cheese. Why are we putting cheese on pizza? Why are we putting meat on pizza?